Jake Morrison stood at the wide window of Harmony Point Station and watched the stars. His black suit felt heavy on his shoulders. Today would change everything between humans and the galaxy. 3 years of talks, arguments, and careful words had led to this moment. The Terran-Zephyrian peace accord would be signed in 1 hour. The station buzzed with activity. Hundreds of beings from dozens of worlds had come to watch. Jake had never seen so many different species in one place. There were the tall blue Arcturians with their 6 arms, the small furry Kepler traders, and the proud red-skinned Drakmari, warriors. But everyone was here for the same reason, to see humans make peace with the mighty Zephyrian Empire. Captain Lisa Burke's voice came through Jake's earpiece. Aurora is holding position at the agreed distance, Ambassador. All systems green. The Zephyrian fleet looks impressive from here. Jake smiled. Lisa always kept things simple and direct. Her ship Aurora floated 3 kilometers away with a small escort of human vessels, much smaller than the massive Zephyrian battle cruisers that filled the space around them. The alien ships looked like floating cities made of crystal and metal, each one capable of destroying a planet. Copy that, Captain. Stay ready, but keep things peaceful. Today we make history. Jake walked through the station's main corridor toward the signing chamber. The walls were made of clear metal that showed the stars beyond. Harmony Point was a neutral station, built by 12 different species as a place for talks and trade. It spun slowly to create gravity, and its rings held gardens, shops, and meeting rooms from across the galaxy. A group of Zephyrian diplomats walked past Jake. They were tall reptilian beings with green and gold scales that caught the light. Their eyes were large and dark, and they moved with the confidence of a species that had ruled space for thousands of years. The lead diplomat, Ambassador Veltar, nodded at Jake with what might have been respect. Ambassador Morrison, your species has surprised us with your persistence. Humans don't give up easily, Ambassador Veltar. I think that's something our peoples can respect about each other. The Zephyrian's scales shifted color slightly. Jake had learned this meant amusement. Perhaps we shall see what your persistence is worth when tested. Jake felt a small chill at those words, but he pushed it away. Today was about peace, not tests. The signing chamber was a large round room with a crystal table in the center. Representatives from the Galactic Commerce Guild, the Neutral Worlds Alliance, and a dozen other groups sat in chairs around the walls. Camera drones floated everywhere, broadcasting to billions of viewers across known space. Admiral Krext entered the room, and Jake felt the temperature drop. The Zephyrian military commander was larger than the diplomats, with scars across his scales and cold yellow eyes. He wore a uniform that seemed to be made of living metal, shifting and changing as he moved. Jake had met him twice during the talks. Both times, the Admiral had made it clear he thought humans were too young and dangerous to deserve peace. Admiral. Jake stood and offered his hand in the human custom. Krexith looked at the offered hand for a long moment before touching it briefly with one clawed finger. Human Morrison, I trust your species understands the honor being granted today. We understand the value of peace, Admiral. I hope we can build something lasting. The ceremony began with speeches from various ambassadors. Jake half listened, as he reviewed the treaty terms in his mind. Humans would get trading rights in Zephyrian space. The Empire would recognize Earth's colonies as legitimate. Both sides would share certain technologies and coordinate on security threats. It wasn't everything humans wanted, but it was a start. When his turn came, Jake stood and spoke clearly into the recording devices. 3 years ago, humanity was alone among the stars. Today, we join the galactic community as partners in peace. This treaty proves that different species can work together, that trust can grow between worlds that were once strangers. Admiral Krexth's scales darkened as Jake spoke, but he said nothing. The actual signing took only minutes. Jake used a pen made from metals found on 12 different worlds. Ambassador Veltar pressed his clawed hand into a bioscanner that recorded his genetic signature. The treaty was complete. Then Krexith's communication device began flashing red. The Admiral stepped away from the table and spoke in rapid Zephyrian with someone on his ship. Jake couldn't understand the words, but he knew the tone. Something was very wrong. When Krexith returned to the table, his entire manner had changed. His scales were now almost black, and his eyes held a cold fire. "The signing is complete," he announced to the room. "However, I have received new orders from the Empire's High Council." Jake felt his stomach drop. "What kind of orders, Admiral?" "The Council has reviewed recent intelligence about human military development. Your species' technological growth has been concerning. The treaty is void by order of the High Council. Humanity is declared a threat to galactic stability." The room erupted in shocked voices. Jake stepped forward, his hands raised. "Admiral, wait. We can discuss this. If there are concerns about our technology, we can address them through diplomatic channels." Krexith's laugh was like breaking glass. "There are no more diplomatic channels, human. Your species has shown its true nature. You build weapons disguised as exploration ships. You spread across space like a virus. The Empire will not allow this threat to grow." Through the chamber's windows, Jake saw lights beginning to flicker on the Zephyrian ships. Weapon charging. Signatures that he had learned to recognize during his military training years ago. Captain Burke's voice crackled through his earpiece, tight with alarm. "Ambassador, I'm reading massive energy spikes from the Zephyrian fleet. They're powering weapons and targeting systems." Jake grabbed Krexith's arm. "Admiral, there are thousands of innocent beings on this station, civilians from dozens of worlds. This is a neutral zone." The Zephyrian pulled free easily, his strength far greater than any human's. "There are no neutral zones when facing a galactic threat. Your presence here contaminates everything." The first plasma bolt hit Harmony Point's outer ring like a hammer blow. The station shuddered, and emergency alarms began screaming. Through the windows, Jake watched as more bolts followed, tearing through the station's habitat sections and docking bays. "All ships, this is Admiral Krexith of the Zephyrian Empire. By order of the High Council, all human vessels and their allies are declared hostile. Any ship that does not surrender immediately will be destroyed." Jake ran for the emergency exit as the chamber's windows began to crack. Behind him, diplomats from a dozen species screamed and fled as the station's atmosphere began to leak into space. Some were calling for help. Others were demanding to know why the Zephyrians were firing on neutrals. Captain Burke's ship Aurora was already moving, trying to get between the station and the Zephyrian battlecruisers. But Jake could see it was hopeless. The human ships were fast but tiny compared to the Empire's war machines. "All human personnel, this is Captain Burke. Emergency evacuation protocol is now in effect. Get to the escape pods immediately." Jake reached an escape pod bay just as another plasma blast hit nearby. The lights went out and he found himself floating in zero gravity as the station's spin slowed. In the darkness, he could hear people crying, praying, and calling for loved ones. As his pod launched into space, Jake looked back at Harmony Point. The beautiful station that had taken decades to build was breaking apart like a glass sculpture dropped on stone. Pieces of hull, atmosphere, and bodies drifted in all directions. The Zephyrian fleet hung in space like dark stars, their weapons still firing. They weren't just attacking human ships now, they were destroying everything. The station, the neutral, vessels, even the escape pods carrying civilians. Jake's pod was picked up by Aurora 20 minutes later. As he climbed aboard, Captain Burke met him at the airlock. Her face was grim. "How many?" Jake asked. "We've recovered about 200 survivors so far. But the station held over 3,000 beings from 40 different worlds." Jake closed his eyes and felt something break inside his chest. Not his heart. That was still beating. Something deeper. His faith in words, in diplomacy, in the idea that reasonable beings could always find peaceful solutions. When he opened his eyes again, Captain Burke saw something new there. Something that made her step back slightly. "Captain," Jake said in a voice she had never heard from the gentle diplomat, "send a message to Earth. Tell them the Zephyrian Empire has just declared war on the entire galaxy, and tell Admiral Cross to prepare everything we have." "Sir, the Empire wants to see humanity's true nature. They're about to get their wish." The emergency session of the Terran Defense Council began at 300 Earth time. President Helen Carter had called every military leader, intelligence chief, and senior diplomat to the underground command center beneath Geneva. The room's massive screens showed the horrible images from Harmony Point on repeat. The station breaking apart, escape pods being hunted down, bodies floating in space. Admiral Ryan Cross stood at the head of the table, his weathered face hard as stone. He had served in 3 interstellar conflicts before humans ever met the Zephyrians. Now he was looking at something worse than war, genocide disguised as military action. "Ladies and gentlemen," President Carter began, "6 hours ago, the Zephyrian Empire broke a signed peace treaty and committed mass murder. 3,000 innocent beings are dead, including 47 humans. We are here to decide how humanity responds." General Patricia Hayes, head of Colonial Defense, spoke first. "Ma'am, our scattered fleet elements are already moving to defensive positions around Earth and the major colonies. But if the Empire commits their full battle fleet, we cannot hold them off for long using conventional tactics." "How long do we have?" Carter asked. Admiral Cross activated a star map that filled the central screen. Red dots marked Zephyrian fleet positions, while blue showed human forces. The difference was sobering. "Their closest major fleet is here, at the Rigel sector," Cross said, pointing to a cluster of red dots. "If they move directly toward Earth, we have maybe 72 hours before they arrive, but I don't think they will." "Why not?" "Because Admiral Crexeth is smart. He knows that attacking Earth directly would unite every species in the galaxy against the Empire. Instead, he'll hit our colonies first. Make examples. Force us to surrender to save civilian lives." President Carter turned to the intelligence briefing officer. "Commander Torres, what are we hearing from other species?" Commander Maria Torres looked tired. She had been fielding communications from across the galaxy since the attack. "It's mixed, ma'am. The Arcturian Federation has condemned the attack but won't commit military support. The Kepler Trading Alliance is staying neutral. The Drakmari clans are interesting. They've sent what might be an offer of assistance, but it's coded in battle poetry that our linguists are still translating." "What about the neutral worlds?" "Terrified. The Empire attacked a neutral station and killed neutral civilians. Every species is wondering if they're next." Admiral Cross stepped forward. "Ma'am, with respect, we're looking at this wrong. Everyone is asking what we can do to defend against the Empire, but defense won't win this war." "What are you suggesting, Admiral?" Cross smiled for the first time since the emergency began. It was not a pleasant expression. "I'm suggesting we show the galaxy what humans do when our families are threatened. Project Mjolnir is ready for field testing." The room went quiet. Project Mjolnir was classified above most of the people present. President Carter nodded slowly. "Brief them, Admiral." Cross touched his command tablet, and the star map changed. Now it showed detailed schematics of ships that looked nothing like traditional human vessels. These were sleek, angular craft that seemed built for speed and violence. "For the past 5 years, we've been developing next-generation combat systems. The Empire thinks they know our capabilities based on our exploration and merchant ships. They're wrong. We've been building a fleet designed specifically to fight enemies with superior numbers and technology." General Hayes leaned forward. "How?" "Adaptive. AI assistance, quantum encrypted coordination, modular weapon systems, and swarm tactics. Our ships are smaller but faster. Our weapons are weaker individually, but can coordinate perfectly. Most importantly, our crews are linked through neural interfaces that let them think and react as one unit. Commander Torres frowned. Sir, neural interfaces are still experimental. The psychological risks have been resolved, Cross said, firmly. We've had volunteer crews training in simulation for 18 months. Captain Sam Rodriguez and Commander Beth Allen have logged over 1,000 hours each in the new systems. They're ready. President Carter stood and walked to the screen, showing the new ships. Admiral, be very clear. Are you telling me we can actually fight the Zephyrian Empire and win? No, ma'am. I'm telling you we can fight them, and make them pay so dearly for every victory that they'll beg for peace. The president was quiet for a long moment. Outside the command center, Earth continued its peaceful rotation. Most humans had no idea their species was now at war with the most powerful empire in known space. How long before these new ships are operational? The first squadron is ready now. Captain Rodriguez's strike cruiser Vengeance and Commander Allen's fighter wing can deploy within 12 hours. The main battle fleet will need another week for final preparations. Do it. 2 hours later, Jake Morrison's damaged shuttle landed at New Geneva Colony. The small world was already in a state of emergency. Colonial Governor Linda Walsh met him at the spaceport with a full security detail. Ambassador, thank God you made it out. We've been watching the news feeds. It's horrible. Jake climbed out of the shuttle and looked around at the bustling colony. New Geneva was home to nearly 2 million humans and had been considered one of the safest worlds in human space. Now it was probably a target. Governor, I need to use your communications array. There are people across the galaxy who need to know what really happened at Harmony Point. Of course, whatever you need. But as they walked toward the government complex, Jake's personal communicator chimed with an incoming message. The return code made him stop walking. Ambassador Morrison. The holographic image of Zara Kothan appeared, speaking in accented but clear English. The Drakmari warrior had skin like red leather and eyes that burned with inner fire. I am battle leader of the Kothan clan. We have heard of the Empire's treachery. Jake had met Zara twice during trade negotiations. The Drakmari were a proud warrior culture that had been pacified by the Zephyrian Empire decades ago. They were forbidden from having weapons or war fleets. Battle leader. Kothan, I'm surprised to hear from you. Do not be. The Empire believes they broke our people's spirit when they took our weapons. They were wrong. We have been waiting for the right moment to reclaim our honor. Today, watching them murder neutrals and break sacred trusts, we know that moment has come. Governor Walsh looked confused, but Jake felt a spark of hope for the first time since the attack. What are you proposing? An alliance of the betrayed. Your people were attacked while seeking peace. My people have lived under the Empire's boot for 30 years. There are others, the mining clans of Kepler-7, the refugees from the Vega colonies. All have suffered under Zephyrian rule. Battle leader, with respect, the Empire took your weapons. How can you fight them? Zara's expression became predatory. Human Morrison, you think like a diplomat. The Empire took our registered weapons. They did not find the weapons we hid in asteroid mining operations, or the ships we disguised as cargo haulers, or the training facilities we built in dead systems they never bothered to patrol. Jake felt his pulse quicken. How many ships? Enough to matter. But ships alone will not defeat the Empire. We need something else. We need the galaxy to see that the mighty Zephyrians can bleed. That evening, Jake sat in his temporary quarters and stared at the recordings he had made during the attack. Admiral Krexith giving the order to destroy everything. Zephyrian ships hunting down escape pods. The screams of innocent beings as Harmony. Point died. He had spent his entire career believing that words could solve any problem, that reasonable beings could always find common ground. The images on his screen showed him how naive he had been. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Governor Walsh entered with a data tablet. Ambassador, you asked me to compile a list of all non-human species that have suffered under Zephyrian expansion in the last 50 years. The list is extensive. Jake took the tablet and scrolled through dozens of entries. Worlds conquered, populations enslaved, cultures destroyed. The Empire's peace had been built on fear and oppression. Governor, I need you to send messages to every human colony world. Tell them to prepare for siege. The Empire will come for them next. Yes, sir. Anything else? Jake looked back at the images from Harmony Point. Somewhere among the wreckage were the bodies of diplomats, merchants, and civilians from 40 different worlds. People who had believed in peace and neutrality right up until the moment the plasma bolts hit. Yes, send another message to Admiral Cross on Earth. Tell him Ambassador Morrison is officially requesting to be reassigned from the Diplomatic Corps to military intelligence. I have a war to plan. Governor Walsh paused at the door. Sir, may I ask what changed your mind? Jake didn't look away from the screen. I used to believe that everyone wanted peace if you just found the right words. Now I know better. Some people only understand one language. What language is that, sir? For the first time since Harmony Point, Jake Morrison smiled. But it was a cold expression that would have frightened his former diplomatic colleagues. Violence, Governor. And it's time they learned that humans are very good at speaking it. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the cargo freighter Lucky Strike as it approached the asteroid field near Titan's Rest. The ship looked old and battered, but Jake knew that was camouflage. Captain Nina Park had modified her vessel with hidden weapons and sensor jammers that would fool most Imperial patrols. Coming up on the coordinates now, Captain Park announced. I'm picking up the signal beacon. Looks like your friends are already here. Through the view screen, Jake could see Titan's Rest, a massive asteroid that had been hollowed out and converted into a mining station decades ago. What the Zephyrian Empire didn't know was that the abandoned facility had become a secret meeting place for resistance groups from across this sector. Elena Vasquez is here, Jake asked. Her ship landed an hour ago, along with 2 others we don't recognize. Your little revolution is growing, Ambassador. Jake wasn't an ambassador anymore. Admiral Cross had officially transferred him to military intelligence 3 days ago. But old habits died hard, and he still thought like a diplomat when building alliances. The docking bay inside Titan's Rest was larger than it appeared from outside. Jake saw Elena's ship Defiance alongside 2 sleek vessels he didn't recognize. As he walked down the Lucky Strike's ramp, a woman with steel-gray hair and scars on her face approached him. Jake Morrison. You look different than I expected. Elena. Vasquez, I presume. You look exactly like I expected. Elena had been the colonial governor of Meridian when the Zephyrian Empire annexed her world 5 years ago. The official story was that she died in the fighting. The truth was that she had escaped with a group of loyal colonists and had been building a resistance network ever since. Come on, Elena said. There are people you need to meet. They walked through corridors carved from solid rock. The asteroid's interior had been expanded over the years into a maze of workshops, living quarters, and storage bays. Jake saw humans working alongside beings from a dozen different species, all unified by their hatred of imperial rule. The main meeting room had been carved from a natural cave and lit by floating glow spheres. Around a rough stone table sat the most unusual collection of beings Jake had ever seen. Elena made introductions. Jake Morrison, meet our allies. Captain Zara Kothan you already know from the communications. The Drakmari warrior stood and clasped Jake's hand in the traditional human greeting. Her grip was strong enough to crush bones, but she was careful not to hurt him. Human Morrison, you have shown wisdom in seeking alliance with warriors. Battle leader Kothan, how many ships can your clans contribute? 47 combat vessels disguised as cargo haulers and mining ships. Each crew has trained in secret for 20 years. We are ready for war. Elena gestured to a small blue-skinned being with large eyes. This is Trade Master Kef of the Kepler Mining Consortium. His people have been enslaved by the Empire for 30 years. Kef spoke in a high musical voice. Ambassador Morrison, my people control the asteroid mining operations in 7 systems. We know where the Empire gets its raw materials, and we know how to cut off those supplies. The third new face belonged to a tall, pale woman with intricate tattoos covering her arms. Commander Rachel Stone, formerly of the Vega Colonial Defense Force. When the Empire destroyed our worlds, some of us managed to escape with our ships. How? Many survivors? Jake asked. Enough. We've been hiding in dead systems, raiding Imperial supply convoys. Small stuff, until now. Elena spread a holographic star map across the table. Red markers showed Imperial fleet positions, while blue dots marked resistance bases and hidden assets. Here's what we have, Elena began. Jake's brought us intelligence from Earth about new human weapon systems. Zara's people have 47 hidden warships. Kef controls the mining operations that feed the Imperial war machine. Rachel has experienced combat crews and detailed knowledge of Imperial patrol routes. Jake studied the map carefully. What about other species? The Arcturians, the Centauri Federation. Officially neutral, Rachel said with disgust. Privately, they're terrified. The Empire has kept peace by making everyone afraid to fight back. Captain Kothen's scales shifted to a darker red. Fear is a weapon that cuts both ways. When the galaxy sees the mighty Empire can be hurt, that fear will turn to hope. That's the plan, Jake said. But we need a target that will get everyone's attention. Something that proves the Empire isn't invincible. Elena touched the map, and it zoomed in on a system near the galactic core. Arcturus Prime, the Empire's main shipyard in this region. They build half their fleet there. That's heavily defended, Rachel pointed out. Which is why they won't expect an attack, Jake replied. How long would it take to coordinate a strike? Kef chittered softly, the Kepler equivalent of laughter. Trademaster, you forget that my people maintain the life support systems at Arcturus Prime. If those systems were to malfunction during an attack, you could sabotage the station from inside? Better. I can get your people inside before the attack begins. Captain Kothen leaned forward. How many Imperial ships defend the shipyard? 12 battle cruisers in normal rotation, Rachel answered. But if they call for reinforcements, they won't have time, Jake said. Not if we do this right. Elena, how quickly can you get word to other resistance cells? Give me 24 hours. But Jake, even with all our ships combined, we're still outnumbered 10-1. Jake smiled. It was the same cold expression that had worried Governor Walsh back on New Geneva. Elena, you're thinking like rebels trying to hide from the Empire. I want you to start thinking like an army that's going to destroy it. 3 days later, Jake stood in the communications center aboard Elena's ship Defiance as it jumped toward the Arcturus system. Around them, a fleet of 40 hidden vessels moved through hyperspace. Human ships disguised as traders, Drakmari cargo haulers with hidden weapons, and stolen Imperial vessels flying under false transponder codes. Incoming transmission from Earth, the communications officer announced. Admiral Cross's image appeared on the main screen. Jake, I have good news and bad news. The good news is that Captain Rodriguez and the Vengeance Battle Group are moving to support your operation. The bad news is that Imperial forces hit the colony at New Geneva this morning. Jake felt ice in his stomach. Casualties? Governor Walsh evacuated most of the population before the attack, but the colony is gone. Admiral Krexth made it personal by broadcasting your name specifically. He's hunting you. Let him come, Jake said quietly. Sir, are the new weapon systems ready? More than ready. Rodriguez's crew has been training with the neural interfaces for 6 months. Commander Allen's fighter squadron can coordinate like a single organism. And Jake, they're angry about New Geneva. Good. Anger will keep them sharp. Captain Kothen appeared on screen beside Admiral Cross. Human Morrison, my scout ships report Imperial fleet movements. They are massing at Rigel, as you predicted. How many ships? 57 battlecruisers under Admiral Krexth's direct command. They moved toward human space in 2 days. Jake nodded. Perfect. When we hit Arcturus Prime, Krexth will have to choose between protecting his shipyards or attacking Earth. Either way, we divide his forces. Elena joined the conversation. Jake, we've received confirmations from resistance cells in 12 systems. When we strike Arcturus, they'll hit Imperial supply depots and communication relays simultaneously. Trademaster Kef reports his people are in position, the communications officer added. Life support systems at Arcturus Prime will fail on your signal. Jake looked around at the faces on the screens. Human, Drakmari, and others, all united by their determination to end Imperial tyranny. 6 months ago, he had been a diplomat who believed in peaceful solutions. Now he was coordinating the largest rebellion in galactic history. All units, this is Morrison. We jump into the Arcturus system in 1 hour. Remember, this isn't just about revenge for Harmony Point or New Geneva. Today we show the galaxy that the Empire can be beaten. Today we give every oppressed species hope. Captain Kothan's image smiled, showing sharp teeth. Today we take the first step toward freedom. As the fleet prepared for battle, Jake received a private message from an unexpected source. The encryption was Zephyrian military grade, but the message was in clear English. Human Morrison. I am Sub-Commander Thylek of the Imperial 4th Fleet. My clutch siblings died at Harmony Point serving as neutral observers. Admiral Krexth's orders violated every code of honor our people claim to follow. When you attack Arcturus Prime, my ship will develop convenient engine problems and be unable to respond quickly. Make your strike count. Make the Admiral pay for his crimes. Jake deleted the message and smiled. The Empire was starting to crack from within. Through the view screen, he could see the other ships in their hidden fleet. Human vessels with their sleek lines and hidden weapons, Drakmari ships that looked like cargo haulers but moved like predators. Former Imperial vessels now serving the cause of freedom. In 1 hour, they would strike the heart of Zephyrian military power. The Empire would learn that their greatest mistake wasn't underestimating human technology or determination. Their greatest mistake was giving humanity a reason to unite the galaxy against them. Captain Sam Rodriguez felt the neural interface come online as his ship Vengeance dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Arcturus system. Information flowed directly into his mind. Fleet positions, weapon status, tactical options, processed by the AI system Justice faster than any biological brain could handle. All systems green, Captain, reported Lieutenant Chris Murphy from the weapons console. Neural link is stable. I can feel the other ships in the network. Rodriguez smiled. The feeling was hard to describe to someone who hadn't experienced it. Through the interface, he could sense Commander Beth Allen's fighter squadron like extensions of his own body. Every pilot, every ship, connected in a web of shared consciousness that let them fight as one organism. Justice. Tactical overview. The AI's voice spoke directly into his mind. Arcturus Prime shipyard is operating at normal capacity. 12 Imperial battlecruisers in defensive positions. Station shields are active. No indication they detect our approach. Through the neural link, Rodriguez felt the entire human battle group. 3 strike cruisers like Vengeance, each one loaded with quantum torpedoes and adaptive plasma cannons. 12 Raptor-class fighters under Commander Allen's control, their pilots linked so closely they could execute maneuvers that looked impossible to outside observers. Morrison's resistance fleet is in position, Justice reported. Trademaster Kef confirms sabotage systems are ready. Life support failure will begin on your mark. Rodriguez opened a channel to the fleet. All units, this is Vengeance. We are weapons free in 30 seconds. Remember, we're not just fighting for humanity today. We're fighting for every species that suffered under Imperial rule. Commander Allen's voice came through the link, calm and focused. Raptor Squadron standing by. We're going to show these scalebacks what human pilots can do. The Arcturus, Prime Shipyard was a massive construction floating in space, its multiple rings and docking bays capable of building 6 battlecruisers simultaneously. Around it, the Imperial Defense Fleet hung in textbook formation, powerful but predictable. Justice, mark targets. Marked. Recommend opening strike on the command ship Emperor's Will. Eliminating their coordination will create maximum confusion. Rodriguez felt the agreement flow through the neural network. Every human in the battle group understood the plan instantly, without need for lengthy communications. All units, execute. Vengeance and her sister ships phased directly into the heart of the Imperial formation. The human vessels moved with impossible coordination, each one knowing exactly where the others would be. Quantum torpedoes launched in perfect sequence, overwhelming the shields of the Imperial command ship. Emperor's Will exploded in a brilliant flash of light. What in the 7 hells was that? Admiral Crexith's voice roared across all frequencies from his flagship Dominion, stationed near Rigel. How did human ships appear inside our defensive perimeter? Commander Allen's fighters swept through the gap created by the larger ships. The Raptors moved like a school of fish, each pilot anticipating the other's moves through the neural link. They targeted the Imperial ship's sensor arrays and communication systems with surgical precision. Target the weapon ports, Allen commanded, through the link. Blind them, then cripple them. Imperial ships began firing back, but their plasma bolts passed through empty space. The human vessels seemed to know where every shot would be before it was fired, dancing between the beams with impossible grace. On Arcturus Prime, Trademaster Kef's sabotage program activated. Life support systems throughout the massive station began failing. Emergency alarms blared as sections lost atmosphere, forcing Imperial personnel to evacuate critical areas. Station shields are fluctuating, Justice reported. Recommend switching to torpedo spread pattern 7. Rodriguez felt the tactical data flow through the network. Every human ship adjusted its position automatically. The next wave of quantum torpedoes hit the shipyard's main reactor complex. Direct hit, station power dropping to 40%, but the Imperial fleet was beginning to adapt. Their remaining ships moved to protect the shipyard, creating overlapping fields of fire that even the human vessels couldn't avoid completely. Vengeance is taking damage to port shield generators, Lieutenant Murphy reported. Elena's resistance fleet is moving in, Justice announced. 47 ships dropping out of hyperspace on the opposite side of the station. The Imperial defenders found themselves caught between 2 forces. Elena Vasquez commanded from her ship Defiance, while Captain Cawthon led the Drakmari vessels in traditional wedge formation. Morrison to all resistance ships, Jake's voice came over the communications. Hit them hard and fast. Show the galaxy that the Empire can bleed. The Drakmari ships shed their cargo hauler disguises, revealing sleek, predatory vessels armed with weapons that had been hidden for 30 years. They moved with the fluid grace of born warriors, their crews singing battle songs that chilled. Imperial blood. Kepler mining ships are targeting the shipyard's construction bays, Justice reported. They know exactly where to hit for maximum damage. The space around Arcturus Prime became a deadly dance of fire and metal. Human ships used their impossible coordination to strike precisely where the enemy was weakest. Drakmari vessels fought with savage fury that reminded the galaxy why the Empire had worked so hard to pacify them. The former Imperial ships of the Vega survivors used their knowledge of Imperial tactics to anticipate every defensive move. Admiral Crexith is demanding status reports, the communications officer announced. He's threatening to execute any commander who retreats. Rodriguez felt grim satisfaction through the neural link. Fear was spreading through the Imperial ranks. Ships that had never faced real opposition were learning what it meant to fight an enemy that refused to be intimidated. Justice, what's our status on the primary target? Arcturus Prime main reactor is critical. Recommend all ships clear blast radius in 90 seconds. All units, this is Vengeance. Primary objective achieved. Begin withdrawal to rally point 7. But as the human ships prepared to disengage, a new threat appeared. Admiral Krexith's personal flagship, Absolute Power, dropped out of hyperspace with a dozen escort vessels. So, Krexith's voice filled the communication channels. The human diplomat has become a warrior. Morrison, I know you can hear me. You have destroyed Imperial property and killed Imperial citizens. For this, your entire species will pay. Jake's voice responded from the Resistance fleet. Admiral, you're the one who started this war when you murdered neutrals at Harmony Point. Today you learned the price of that decision. You think these primitive tactics can defeat the might of the Empire? I will show you true power. Absolute Power was 3 times the size of any other ship in the system. Its weapons could destroy planets, and its shields had never been breached. In a century of warfare, as it moved toward the human battle group, smaller vessels scattered like leaves before a storm. Justice. Analysis. Enemy flagship is beyond our conventional weapons capabilities. Recommend coordinated quantum torpedo strike with full battle group support. Rodriguez felt the neural network pulse with shared determination. Through the link, he sensed Commander Allen's fighters moving into position for a suicide run that might crack the flagship's shields. Negative, Raptor Squadron. Pull back. I have another idea. Rodriguez to Resistance Fleet. I need you to keep those escort ships busy. Elena, can your people handle that? Copy, Vengeance. Drakmari vessels are already engaging. Give us 5 minutes. Rodriguez turned to his tactical officer. Murphy, prepare for emergency hyperspace jump. I want us to appear directly above that flagship's main reactor. Sir, that's impossible. The gravitational interference from their ship will tear us apart. Not if Justice calculates the jump perfectly, and not if we only stay for 10 seconds. Through the neural link, Rodriguez felt his crew's understanding and acceptance. They all knew this was likely a one-way trip, but they also knew it was the only way to prove that the Empire's greatest ship could be destroyed. Justice, can you do it? Probability of successful materialization, 43%. Probability of survival after torpedo deployment, 12%. Recommend proceeding with mission. Rodriguez looked around his bridge at the crew that had become his extended family through the neural interface. Anyone who wants to object, speak now. Lieutenant Murphy checked his weapons console. Quantum torpedoes armed and ready, sir. The navigation officer looked up from her controls. Jump coordinates locked in. We're ready when you are, Captain. All hands, brace for emergency hyperspace jump. Elena, Jake, it's been an honor serving with you. Tell Earth that Vengeance kept faith. The ship vanished from normal space and reappeared 10 meters above Absolute Power's hull. For a moment that lasted forever, the massive Imperial flagship filled their view screen like a metal mountain. Rodriguez felt the neural link expand to include every human in the battle group. Through their shared consciousness, he experienced Commander Allen's fierce pride, Elena's grim satisfaction, and Jake Morrison's cold determination. Fire everything. 12 quantum torpedoes detonated simultaneously against Absolute Power's hull. The explosion lit up space like a new star being. Born when the light faded, Admiral Krexth's flagship was breaking apart, its reactor core exposed to vacuum. Vengeance was gone, vaporized in the explosion it had caused. Through the communication channels, the 3 months after the Battle of Arcturus Prime, Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of the space station Unity, watching the most unusual fleet in galactic history assemble in Earth orbit. Human vessels with their sleek adaptive designs flew alongside Drakmari warships that sang with the voices of their crews. Former Imperial ships bore the colors of freed colonies, while Kepler, mining vessels had been converted into surprisingly effective support craft. Admiral Cross joined him at the viewport, looking older but more satisfied than Jake had ever seen him. The final count is in. We have over 300 ships from 47 different species. Not bad for a revolution that started with one destroyed peace treaty. Any word from the core systems? The Empire is in full retreat. After we destroyed their shipyard and killed Admiral Krexeth, rebellions broke out on 60 worlds. The Imperial Council is calling for negotiations. Jake smiled grimly. Let them call. They'll negotiate from a position of weakness this time. The destruction of absolute power had shattered more than just metal and lives. It had broken the myth of Imperial invincibility that had kept the galaxy in line for centuries. Species that had been afraid to even whisper complaints about Imperial rule were now openly declaring independence. Commander Beth Allen approached, still wearing the black armband that marked her as one of Captain Rodriguez's surviving crew. She had taken command of the human fighter wings after Vengeance's sacrifice, and her pilots treated her with the reverence reserved for living legends. Jake, we're receiving a transmission from the Zephyrian home system. It's marked as an official, diplomatic communication. Put it through to the main conference room. Time to see what they want. The conference room aboard Unity had been designed to accommodate beings from dozens of different species. Jake took his place at the head of the curved table with Admiral Cross to his right and Captain Cothan to his left. Elena Vasquez represented the colonial resistance, while Trademaster Kef spoke for the Kepler Mining Consortium. The holographic image that appeared was not what Jake expected. Instead of a military commander or imperial diplomat, they faced an elderly Zephyrian with faded scales and tired eyes. I am High Counselor Rathmore, first speaker of the Zephyrian Assembly. I come before you not as a conqueror, but as one who seeks to end a war that has brought nothing but suffering to both our peoples. Captain Cothan's scales darkened with suspicion. Pretty words from the same council that ordered the murder of neutrals at Harmony Point. Battle leader Cothan speaks truth, the High Counselor replied, surprising everyone by using the Drakmari's proper title. The decision to attack Harmony Point was made by Admiral Krexeth and a faction of military extremists. They convinced the Council that humanity posed an immediate threat that required swift action. And now? Jake asked. Now Admiral Krexeth is dead, his faction discredited, and 60 worlds have declared independence from Imperial rule. We face the complete collapse of the government that has maintained galactic peace for 8 centuries. Elena leaned forward. Your definition of peace involved enslaving entire species and destroying any world that resisted. Yes, the High Counselor said simply. We convinced ourselves that order justified oppression, that stability was worth any price. The events of recent months have shown us the cost of that philosophy. Admiral Cross studied the Zephyrian carefully. What exactly are you proposing, High Counselor? Complete withdrawal of Imperial forces from all contested systems. Recognition of the independence of any world that chooses to leave Imperial rule. And most importantly, the establishment of a new galactic government based on representation rather than domination. The conference room fell silent. Jake had expected demands for surrender or threats of retaliation. This was something entirely different. In exchange for what? He asked. In exchange for guarantees that the core Zephyrian worlds will not be invaded or destroyed. My people are proud, but we are not stupid. Your alliance has proven it can defeat our military forces. We prefer negotiation to extinction. Trademaster Kef chittered softly. The High Counselor fears that his people will face the same treatment they gave to others. A reasonable fear, Captain Cothan added. The Empire showed no mercy to those who opposed them. Jake stood and walked to the viewport, looking out at the mixed fleet that had grown from the ashes of Harmony Point. Ships from dozens of worlds, united not by fear, but by a shared commitment to freedom. High Counselor, I need to discuss this with my allies, but I will tell you this. Humanity didn't start this war to conquer the galaxy. We started it to prove that no single species has the right to rule over others. Then we may have common ground for discussion. After the transmission ended, the debate began immediately. Elena wanted guarantees that former Imperial colonies would receive reparations. Captain Cothan demanded that Zephyrian military forces be permanently reduced. Trademaster Kef insisted on strict oversight of Imperial resource extraction operations. "The question," Admiral Cross said finally, "is whether we can trust them to honor any agreement we make." "We couldn't trust their last agreement," Elena pointed out bitterly. "They broke a peace treaty and committed mass murder." Jake returned to his seat, his mind working through the possibilities. "The High Counselor is right about one thing. If the Empire collapses completely, we'll have chaos across half the galaxy. Billions of beings depend on Imperial infrastructure for basic services." "So we replace it," Commander Allen said. "Build something better." "With what authority? Who elected? Us to rule the galaxy?" Captain Cothan's scales shifted to a thoughtful blue-green. "Human Morrison speaks wisdom. We fight for freedom, not conquest. If we impose our will on others, we become what we fought against." Over the following week, representatives from across the galaxy converged on Earth for the most significant political gathering in galactic history. The Arcturian Federation sent their greatest philosophers. The Centauri Republics contributed legal scholars who had studied governmental systems for millennia, even species that had remained neutral throughout. The War sent observers. The negotiations took place in the same building where humans had once signed their first interstellar treaties. But now, instead of humanity begging for recognition, they sat as equals among the galaxy's great powers. Jake found himself appointed as chairman of the Constitutional Convention, a role that terrified and honored him in equal measure. 6 months ago, he had been a simple diplomat trying to secure trading rights for his species. Now, he was helping to design a government for hundreds of worlds. "The fundamental principle," he addressed the assembly, "must be that no single species or alliance can dominate others. We've seen where that path leads." The Zephyrian delegation, led by High Counselor Rathmore himself, accepted limitations on their military that would have been unthinkable before Arcturus Prime. In exchange, they retained control of their core systems and received guarantees against invasion. The Drakmari demanded the right to maintain their warrior traditions, but agreed to restrictions on aggressive expansion. The Kepler Consortium won protections for worker rights that ended centuries of exploitation. Most importantly, the new Galactic Federation included enforcement mechanisms that prevented any single member from vetoing actions supported by the majority. The days of Imperial intimidation were over. 2 years after Harmony Point, President Jake Morrison stood before the Federation Assembly on Earth and delivered his inaugural address. The transformation still seemed impossible, from diplomat to revolutionary to elected leader of a galactic government. "We gather here today not as conquerors or subjects, but as free beings committed to a simple principle, that the right to determine one's own destiny belongs to every sentient species in the galaxy." In the audience, Admiral Cross wore the uniform of the Federation Defense Force, charged with protecting the peace they had fought so hard to achieve. Commander Allen led the integrated fighter squadrons that included pilots from dozens of worlds. Elena Vasquez served as governor of the Liberated Colonies Council, ensuring that no world would ever again face Imperial oppression. Captain Cothan commanded the Federation's Rapid Response Fleet, her Drakmari crews working alongside former enemies to maintain security across the trade routes. High Counselor Rathmore sat in the Zephyrian delegation, a reformed empire that had learned to lead through example rather than force. The empire that attacked Harmony Point claimed to maintain galactic peace through strength, Jake continued. Today we begin a new kind of peace, one based on justice, representation, and the understanding that true strength comes from protecting the weak rather than oppressing them. As he spoke, Jake's thoughts turned to Captain Rodriguez and the crew of Vengeance, whose sacrifice had made this moment possible. Their memorials stood in Earth's orbit, a reminder that freedom always required the courage of those willing to fight for it. The galaxy that emerged from the war was not perfect. There were still conflicts between species, disputes over resources, and worlds that struggled with the transition to self-governance. But for the first time in centuries, those conflicts were resolved through negotiation rather than conquest. The Zephyrian Empire still existed, but as